The channel Jim Athers is most famous for its character Foamy the Squirrel, whose videos I usually enjoy. He's recently released a video, however, riddled with flaws based on an apparent misunderstanding of pedagogy. To the layperson, his comments may seem to make sense, hence the video currently having over 85,000 views and over 4,100 likes. My intention is to demonstrate the rhetorical flaws in Foamy's video and inform viewers of some of the nuances that make the topic of bullying in school a bit more complex than what it may seem for an outsider looking into the profession of education.
It's not just the bullies. It's the inert teachers that stand by, idle, that have really gotten under my skin. All they do is walk in and out of the teacher's lounge, punching the clock, and babysitting dumbass kids for the majority of the day.
First off, the time clock reference's accuracy is limited to metaphor alone, as no state can afford to actually pay teachers by the hour for the amount of work most of them do. And if any of us did really get about $5 per hour babysitting wage for each kid that we supervise and educate, we'd make significantly more than what our salaries amount to. In my case, I'd make about 7 times more than what I actually make if I was paid like that, and babysitters have a fraction of the responsibility teachers have. That being said, make no mistake about it, child care is a part of a teacher's many tasks, and the younger the students, the bigger the part it is. Just ask any parent with 2 or more children how they'd like to care for 30-plus children that weren't theirs for 7 hours a day. Just keeping peace and order alone is a logistic puzzle that even veteran educators have to keep working on to solve, even late in their careers. I'm a high school teacher, so this is the perspective that I'll be responding to you from, being that bullying does take place at all grade levels and you never specify a certain grade level in your video.
Yes, I understand you supposedly don't get paid enough, but why did you become a teacher in the first place? If you said job security, pension, and benefits, you should not have the job.
If the only things a person wanted were job security, pension, and benefits, then there are tons of jobs that require less formal education and offer higher pay rates than that of a teacher. Now, I'm not going to speak as though all teachers are good at their jobs just because they have them. Many teachers, particularly older ones, have been burned out by the rigors of the profession and are just going through the motions during their last 10 years or so, sitting on tenure and waiting to stumble across the finish line of retirement. Those teachers should be removed to make room for younger, more invigorated prospective educators. That problem could be addressed in a number of ways, but that's a digression. The point is that not all teachers are good at their jobs, just like not every single member of most professions is great at what he or she does. This doesn't make your criticisms offered in this video any more valid.
You become a teacher to fucking teach! And that goes for every aspect of life, including how to handle bullies.
Wrong. In terms of motivation, people become teachers for various reasons. Many go into teaching because they believe they can make a positive impact. Some go into it because they're passionate about the subject area they plan to teach, and others even go into the job as a backup plan since they couldn't make it in the field they majored in college. As for being a teacher's responsibility to teach students every aspect of life, that's patently false. Teachers have a set curriculum that they are required to educate their classes on throughout the course of a semester or school year. They have to prepare 25 to 40 kids at a time for a battery of assessments, and all of those kids come from unique backgrounds and parenting philosophies. They have different levels of cognitive development, learning disabilities, and social skills. It's hard enough to teach that many different kids at the set curriculum at the same place and time. Now you're suggesting that teachers also teach them about every aspect of life? In addition to the logistic problems with that, there's the subjectivity that comes into general life lessons. Quality teachers do the best they can to prepare students with basic life skills beyond the curriculum, despite the obvious challenges to do so and that it isn't required of their jobs. I've taught plenty of kids some simple life skills from how to shave to how to tie a necktie. However, all aspects of life will be far more complicated. Are you suggesting it's a math teacher's job to teach a kid how to talk to girls or how to vote or what his morals and life priorities should be? Those things aren't simple objective life lessons, and they require parenting. Your specific example was to teach them how to handle bullies, though you never said how. People deal with bullies differently based on what works for them. Some ignore them, some laugh them off, some retaliate verbally, some retaliate physically, and so forth. You also say in the very next line that teachers should deal with the bullies themselves, which isn't the same as teaching kids how to handle them.
If it's brought to your attention that one kid is picking on another, do something about it! Don't just say, oh, he's only playing around, or God forbid, you use the old standby, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me.
Again, you haven't said what teachers should do with a bully in the classroom. You've only said that it's wrong for teachers to explain to kids that other kids are just joking around and so forth. However, many of them are. Bullying is very often a misunderstanding when Kid A is picking on Kid B without understanding that Kid B is actually very upset and distraught by it. Kid A usually thinks it's all for fun, and Kid B is usually going to act like it doesn't bother him or her to spare the embarrassment. Bullying of this nature can be a real risk for a teacher to run in and break up. Kid B might be even more embarrassed, and Kid A might become more angry at Kid B for getting in trouble over what was assumed to be very harmless. Plenty of kids do joke around by throwing harmless insults at one another, just as I do with many of my adult friends. It's part of social development for kids to learn those differences, and if a teacher breaks instruction to handle every single case of name-calling or insults, that teacher will not be taken seriously by his or her students, let alone by school administration. A teacher needs to pick his or her battles and only address the things that are clear threats to the learning environment. So, some things are going to be missed, and kids are at some point going to have to stand up for themselves, just like they will after school when the teacher isn't there to protect them anymore. Oftentimes, teachers may have to ignore the issue publicly and then deal with it via a phone call home or a private discussion with the student or parent. These behind-the-scenes methods are usually more effective, and the application thereof does not render the teacher worthy of the label fat, drunk bitch.
Okay. Keep that in mind when I call you a drunk fat bitch with poor teaching skills who, at best, is a glorified babysitter.
You're drawing a false equivocation here, unless a teacher sat by and literally did nothing while a student used similarly harsh language against another student, then only address the issue when the same language was used on him or her.
That's it, young man. Go to the principal's office. Here we go again. Another instance of a teacher passing off a problem on someone else.
Referring a hostile student to an administrator or counselor is something I personally do sparingly, but there are certain times where it's the best course of action. Some students need to be dealt with in a one-on-one environment, isolated from the crowd mentality of a class. Most schools have policies that require a student to go to the principal's or counselor's office if they're sent out of class, and due to any number of factors that led to it, some bullies or otherwise distraught students become a distraction to the class that simply can't function properly when they're present. If a teacher stops the entire class to publicly address one disgruntled student, the other 24 to 39 of those students have their lessons put on hold, usually for an unproductive spectacle. So it's not passing the problem off, it's dealing with it the best way they can.
So, now, once in the principal's office, let that person know that your teacher came up with this inane theory that names will never hurt them. And applying the scientific method, you decided to test that theory by calling her a drunk fat bitch with poor teaching skills. The results of this experiment showed the subject became very irritable and aggressive, and thus renders their previous theory of names never hurting them null and void.
It's noteworthy that you still haven't explained how teachers should teach their students to handle bullying. You've only preached that they should. If a teacher's best tactic is to explain to the victim that the other kids don't mean it as harshly as that student thinks, what else can the teacher do? You certainly haven't offered a detailed curriculum to solve the problem.
I don't believe I should be taught by an individual who can't put into practice rudimentary concepts, nor do I feel I should be supervised by an individual who is clearly emotionally unstable. I'd like to speak to my lawyer now.
Suggesting that a teacher is unqualified to do his or her job because he or she was unable to wave a wand and make all bullying in the classroom go away is absurd. There's nothing emotionally unstable about sending a disruptive student out of the room. In this quirky scenario you've constructed, if that teacher sent the bully to the principal or counselor to have his or her behavior discussed, wouldn't that be doing something? Or would it still be just passing the problem off to someone else? We wouldn't know because you still haven't told us your solution for teachers to implement.
Grow up! Don't take it seriously. They're only joking. And other various dismissive phrases are not a solution to the problem. Actions solve problems.
Great. I guess this is the part where you're going to tell us the actions you've been referring to when you keep telling teachers to do something. I'm glad you're actually going to tell us what the teachers should do rather than just ramble about what doesn't work.
Frankly, I'd boycott all schoolwork until the issue was resolved. Get together with like-minded classmates and refuse to go to class while picketing outside your poor excuse of a learning facility. Make up signs that say, bullies block learning, or teachers ignore students. Or, better yet, this school harbors emotional terrorists. That should get the FBI involved, merely on a homeland security basis.
You've just set up your audience, which you said at the start was inert teachers, to believe that their current strategies of suggesting bullied students to ignore their verbal assailants or to take their words less seriously are ineffective. You claim actions are what really solves problems. Then, as the inert teachers listen for what actions you're talking about, you go back to addressing bullied students and tell them to protest. They should make signs that say, "Bullies block learning," and refuse to go to class, because refusing to go to class doesn't block learning, does it, Foamy? You still haven't given a single strategy for how to actually deal with bullies, because you don't have one. And your real audience isn't the teachers whose job you seem to think that you could do so much better. Your real audience is the vast majority of people, being those who were bullied at some point in their childhood. They grew up and went on YouTube and get real excited when you slam the teachers they think they had by constructing a fictional scenario, and they enthusiastically type out their own personal exaggerations of scenarios of how their teachers were all evil demons who hated children and let bullies rule the classroom with an iron fist. But we'll get to them later.
And if they decide to threaten you with suspension, let them. I don't think any parent of a child who's being bullied is going to be mad at you for taking a stand. Frankly, they should join in. I would. There's power in numbers, folks. Instead of being the one singled out, turn that shit around and start pointing the finger at the real problem.
So now's the time to get the parents involved, huh? You don't think that it would have been best to get the parents of the bully involved early on, or maybe to look into the family of the bully student to see what challenges that student is coming from? It might just take some guidance from a parent that you evidently don't think needs to be contacted until a student gets suspended for protesting a school because bullies aren't handled in the way that you think they should be, which you never tell. Your investigation might lead you to find out that a bully doesn't have any parents, or that the parents are impoverished or addicted to hard drugs, or any number of other complex scenarios that you didn't consider when you were expecting a teacher to just do something about them.
Do not waver, do not give in, do not compromise. No one will fault you for standing your ground against a bully. And if they do, they themselves have never been the victim of it. They don't understand. Fuck them.
I suppose that's a great solution. It sounds firm and rebellious, but it does nothing to bridge the gap between victims and those who can't empathize with them. More importantly, if you'd bother to deconstruct what's happening in school, you might realize that students are best off if they learn to take a stand against bullies on their own, rather than running to an authority figure. That's the kind of stand kids need to learn to take, so that when the security blanket of academic authority is removed, they aren't sheltered or helpless against the bullies of the real world. Now, as for that fan base of yours who flooded your comment section with examples of times they were brutally bullied in school and the teachers did nothing because they were too lazy or didn't like them, etc. Again, I'm not going to say that bad teachers don't exist. There are tons of them out there. However, if something like that happens, it's time for parents who entrust their children to those teachers to get involved. Administrators and school boards need to be notified so that they can address the problem. If your teacher did nothing when you were seriously and damagingly bullied, and that teacher kept his or her job or was never reprimanded, it's probably because you and or your parents were equally inactive afterward. Or maybe, just maybe, reality and your childhood memories aren't entirely in sync. It's possible. Just bear in mind that teachers aren't magicians who can easily turn children who have come from years of poor parenting and a wide range of cultural challenges into bright, productive, and peaceful citizens just because they went into their professions to teach.